my wings. I will not live in fear. My eyes they may dust. I will see the mirror with clear. My path may be blocked. I shall still walk on with courage. My life cannot be a beggar's platter in cage. I am free and shall be what I am. The cause is never small, big, or misty, for I have to esteem myself in honesty. My inner voice cannot go unheard. The world may ignore my word. I shall be a free bird, not a caged bird. I shall be a free bird, not a caged bird.
Hello, I'm Maria Amandine, and today we are at the Mumbai University campus. We'll interview Dr. Bhagya Srivarna, Associate Professor of the English Department. Come with me. Thank you so much for having me today and allowing us to discover your office. And I absolutely love what you've done around. First, I wanted to discuss about your book, Siesta, that you've launched just a few weeks back. So you launched it with Iravati Mayadev and Atul Tiwari, right?
Yes.
And they are both recognized for their impact on theater, on poetry, and cinema. So I wanted to know, what is your personal connection with these art forms?
Okay. I'm happy you talk about siesta. I actually am very excited about this book because this was not really planned. You know, I kept writing poems for a long time, but this was a specific kind of competition online. It was called Writers Challenge by Bookleaf,
Oh,
and we were expected to upload two poems or more poems every day continuously for 20 or 21 days. And I think they had declared from the beginning that the winner will get Emily Dickinson Award, and also the book will be printed by them. So I was very excited about the competition. I think July 10th they began it. So we started uploading the poems, and sometimes it was a problem because spontaneously you have to write. And if I have a fragment or a piece pre-written, I was polishing it, I was trying to edit it and put it online again. So somehow I went on, and the link was not broken, and 31st July we completed the competition. In August the book was printed, the Emily Dickinson Award was given, and then I just expected that I should give a good photograph of my mother on the cover, and they accepted it. So they have a system called print on demand. As soon as the book was live online, they also wrote me an email that it is globally live now on the websites like Booktopia, Barnes and Nobles, and US websites also have a cost as much as $32.
okay.
Though
Wow.
Indian rupee cost is quite reasonable, and I'm happy that we are able to get it accessible to everyone, even the students.
So now to start talking about the access to literature.
Yes.
As per you, when does the taste of literature start, and what's your personal journey with it?
Okay. So, literature as literature was not introduced to me in a very disciplinary form,
Okay.
because, as I mentioned, my father was a school teacher and he taught English, and he was specifically keen about how I learn poems, how I recite poems. So he used to sit with me every evening और मुझे सिखाते थे बेटा पोएम कैसे पढ़नी चाहिए. It's not like nursery rhyme twinkle twinkle little star all the children learn, but he used to teach me the accent, the tone, the lyricism in poetry, and that was a kind of orientation program. You know, so literature actually came to me in the form of poetry first, and then the access was widening gradually. I started reading stories, I started reading books and going to teachers of literature, and gradually, by the time I was a teenager, I had already known that I am going to be a person of literature, because it was a restlessness in my mind. If I don't read a story today, my day is wasted.
Wow.
That kind of childhood I had, and my papa used to bring books from library, Chacha Chaudhary comics, you know, all those Hindi comics, English comics. Gradually, Gulliver's Travels, I had read these classics of Chaucer and Hardy and Jonathan Swift when I was even not 10th, ninth and 10th. He enlightened me so early. He was actually hurrying my growth and development. He used to say, नहीं तुमको ये भी आना चाहिए, you should learn this, you should read this, Shakespeare पढ़ो, पहले ये पढ़ो, पहले ये drama. So he was so keen about my knowledge of literature, and being a person of literature himself, probably he was handing over that legacy to me unknowingly, so hurriedly, and later on he departed. So I think that was a destiny, and it was destined, I should say literature was destined to be in my life, and I was destined to be a person of literature.
So, um,
Yes.
how do you think we should bring literature to more people? How can we do for more people to access it?
Literature, of course, it should be accessible to more people, to common people, most important to the children, to the growing children in schools, in colleges, because this is the time when human psychology is getting shaped. I could understand the deeper part of literature, any story, any poem, because I was given this kind of gutti,
Yeah.
the dose
Mm.
in my childhood. So it's difficult to teach literature. It's difficult to share anything of literature when people are already grown up, because their mind is already molded. They have a psychology which is shaped, and reshaping is difficult.
Mm.
So my concern is with the growing children. I always feel lucky that I'm teaching college children, school children. Sometimes, of course, I'm teaching MA people only, but sometimes I go to schools, not for having any purpose, but just to talk to children and knowing what are they reading. And sometimes my heart aches to see how the school children are not given enough literature in the dose of their nutrition,
Yes.
of education.
Mm.
So, my suggestion and proposal would be, if we want literature to be accessed by common people, because tomorrow's generation is today's children only, we should bring it to the schools, mostly to the schools. And this was the thought on my mind when I started proposing to the schools that I will come to your school and take some classes of creative writing, of poetry writing, of how to write poems and small rhymes.
Oh.
And I enjoyed that, because little children, they are so pure, innocent, they pick up very fast, they speak as you teach them. And when I took my first workshop on some school around in my village, I am from Nanded, so my hometown, I remember a fifth class child could write the first two lines of his poetry, in English, and his
Wow.
name was Nikhil. So it was so simple for him, and he was thrilled to write, I will not pay the bill because my name is Nikhil. So that was funny, but I was happy that he could understand what is rhyme. A small child of fourth class, fifth class, if the children are able to understand rhyming, if they are able to pick up the toning, the scansion, the metrics, the lyricism, automatically they learn poetry, they get interested in poetry and literature. Like I said, because it came to me from and through and via poetry, it is easy access.
Yes.
Poetry can become an agency to get literature into the mind of people. And then the story comes. The story is much later. I remember the grandma telling story, and people talk about the grandma stories, and people are like fond of. Everybody has a grandma memory story, memory, but the story comes to your mind when you are able to grasp.
Yes.
But the poem comes to your mind even when you are not ready for it. You hum a tune to a small baby in the cradle. The baby doesn't understand the story. If you tell this baby that there was a king, he had two wives, whatever, the baby will not understand, not appreciate. But you hum the tune of a poem and the baby will respond. If you Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and other poems and Jack and Jill, you recite those poems to the small children who do not understand the stories, but they understand the poem, because a poem is the mother of the story. Let us first acquaint people with the mother, and automatically literature will come. So that is one thing I think all the schools and parents should think about it. Even the parents who are sometimes harsh to their children and saying that why are you reading poems and why are you wasting your time in literature and all, just go to science, just get your chemistry done, just get your mathematics done. So people are actually obsessed with science, technology, the ambition of parent of making their children either a doctor or an engineer or a scientist. No, it is still there.
Yes. It's in unfortunately in the whole world today it works like that. So do you think there are currently programs that are working towards this idea of letting people access literature, and what do you need what do you think they would need to work more efficiently? What do they actually lack currently for to work?
Yeah, I can say there are multiple programs. Some people are already exercising, and we can have innovative design of programs. You know how to bring literature, poetry to children, to people. Creative writing workshops are
Mhm.
there. As I said, I have been conducting creative writing workshops, poetry workshops, going college to college and school to school, but also uh, promotion to the children in not only competitions but some of the programs where we have a line of, you know, spontaneous activities. Like in classroom, if every teacher decides to promote a child who is poetic, who is expressive, expressive is the keyword. You know, sometimes
Yes.
what happens, children are expressive but they are controlled. In the name of control, what the teacher does, if the child is speaking something, I remember the schoolish system, even now we have that system in many of the schools. If the child is whispering something, the teacher is speaking, the teacher has an idea that, oh, that child is doing something in the backbench speaking and disturbing me. So what the teacher does, you
Mm-hmm.
keep quiet, you don't, shut up, you don't speak. This is a wrong method. A child who is learning to speak, who is trying to speak, that the teacher should intervene and say, oh yes, you're saying something, come on, tell me, share with us. No, instead of this, if you make the child speak, because the teacher is supposed to be the first agency of enlightenment
Mm-hmm.
along with the parents.
Mm.
Even the parents do the same thing at home. The child is trying to speak something, you are a child, you don't know, you are a kid, just keep quiet. So
Mm.
I think that is a bad practice. Not only in India, many of the countries, many of the schools and colleges, we find people are not given voice. They have the voice which is suppressed, even when they are children. So that is a wrong thing. I think we should bring this in the notice of every school, institution, government colleges, whatever agencies we have, the agencies of education. Sometimes the film industry is doing that very well. You have seen Three Idiots.
Yes, of
You
course.
have seen other films where children are speaking in the class, and the teacher is saying something, and one brilliant child, you know, naughty child, you can say, makes fun of the teacher or says something, and all of them laugh. And some teachers take it as an offense. अरे ये कैसी फिल्म है, टीचर का मजाक उड़ाया जा रहा है. But that is not mazak. We have to understand that sense of humor is also the way of give and take in communication.
Mm.
If you communicate with a lively voice, making a joke, it is not insulting someone.
Mm.
That is also expression. So why are we not promoting expression? And I think drama is a best place for that. Theater is doing this in a very, very lively manner. People don't get offended if the same thing happens in theater.
That's
Right.
true. Yes.
So theater, here comes the role of theater, which
Mm.
is more powerful than cinema, which is more powerful than education agencies.
Mm.
Right.
Right. So, in this idea, who do you think is the most important, or maybe who are all the people that can help social figures? Maybe so it could be authors or teachers. You were talking about filmmakers or even playwrights, maybe influencers in this world. So, uh, how do you think these people can find their place? What do you think are their roles in this?
Yes, I know. I can say filmmakers are a different category altogether,
Mm.
because what happens in filmmaking, lot of things are involved, right? Writers are a passive category because the job of the writer is write a book and give it to the public. And if people are ready to learn from the book, it's good. They will read and learn, because reading culture is now, gradually diminishing. We have the WhatsApp messages and the Facebook and the Insta media, all the media. We read there. Even if it is Rumi's poem, even if it is Gulzar's lines, we read on WhatsApp. We don't go to the book of Gulzar. We don't go to the book of Rumi. So the book culture is evaporating now. So writers have to update themselves and they have to come to the technology. Like modern writers write on, you see the young poets, spoken poetry is one part of modern technology. So young poets are directly coming to the stage, holding the mic and narrating their poems. Not only that, for the younger generation, there are people who prepare poster kind of, floating, what do you say, posters, pictures, and you have a very smart picture, nature scenery, something, flower, and a matching poem with that. So visuals are attached. Visual media is doing a good job. But again, there is a limit. Just like the writers are passive, just like the filmmakers are public oriented or money oriented, the poster makers or the media influencers are also publicity oriented. So any social figures that you look at will have one dimension, which is plus and minus both. Again, here, if you want to merge all the things, I think parents, teachers, social workers, if we call them social workers, reformers, now the phrase looks to be very cliche. When we say social worker or social reformer, it looks very cliche. But there are still people who go to NGOs, who like to enlighten others, who like to enlighten themselves. So there are sociable peoples who are like angels in the society to some extent. I would call them angels in the society because of their entry something happens. You go to an old age home, for example. The old age home is a routine. It's a mundane, tedious routine for all the old people, getting their breakfast in time, getting the medical checkup in time, getting the lunch on time. But if some visitor comes, look at the hustle and bustle. So that visitor is an excitement that somebody is going to visit us, and that is the agency. The social agents are just like that. I think they can help. My concern is when we look at the social figures who will help us connect with literature, theatre, cinema, and social reform more correctly, accurately, appropriately, we have to come back to teachers, we have to come back to parents, because the parents will decide where and what their children are going to watch. Is it a cinema or a theatre play? If Rishabh tells me my play is there in such and such venue and such place, and I won't, I would promise Rishabh, yes, okay, I'll look after it, but I won't send my students to see that, because I know that he is doing something which I don't expect. If it is a very advanced reform made, because parents have their own vision, they have to be enlightened first. If we try to counsel the parents, I would say to some extent teachers also, the old school teachers are still there who are at the retiring age, and they would not like to see the rapid change happening. Change is very difficult to accept. It's very difficult to accept. It's easy to say that I want change, but when the change comes, we are not ready to take it, because the change is always in a different form. It's not in the same form that we want. So change is the spice of life, we say, but do we prepare ourselves to create our life spicy? That's the problem.
That's a very good question.
Yes.
So I would say, as a writer yourself, do you take at heart to bring literature to a wider audience, and how would you do it? How do you involve yourself in this success?
I would shyly include myself in the writer category, as you said. So it's very prestigious to say that I'm a writer, or it's very, very joyful to feel that I'm a writer. But
well, then I will offer it again. You're a writer. You published 9 books by now.
Yes.
So we can recognize you this beautiful title.
Yes, thank you so much. What I mean is, along with the role of a writer, I always remember that I'm a teacher. I always remember that I'm a woman. So I have my different dimensions which are appealing to my mind to work in different ways, you know. So to make this more popular is a wrong word, probably publicly appealing, I should say.
Yeah.
Not because I write some poems, but because everyone should write, and I should spread a message that if I can do it, anyone can do it, because I'm just like you. So if I have written a poem on Gandhiji, on say democracy, on freedom, on the idea of slavery and freedom, if you go to the writer like Bernard Shaw, now Bernard Shaw had written one essay on freedom long back. People may have forgotten that, but that idea, when my teacher taught me, it lingered in my mind so obsessively that the same idea was reproduced in the form of my poem when I was talking about freedom. And I remembered and I realized that Bernard Shaw is coming back through my voice.
And do you think that's why you decided to start these workshops about creative writing? You wanted people to find their own voice to speak about what they are experiencing, and maybe also creating this bond between literature and them that is always seem to be so distant, but everyone can actually access
That's
literature.
right. That's right. That is the main thought behind ideal workshops. You know, ideals. Sometimes we also create a gap, and we say, "Oh, this is only an idea. We can't bring it into practice." But unless you try, how do you know that the idea is not real? Did you ever imagine that people will be flying before they were not flying? So that was an idea. And I always give one small quote as an inspiring line for the youngsters who are trying, who are never trying. Sometimes they feel hesitated, they hesitate, they feel hesitant, so much so that not only because of the shyness, but because they are having fear. So the lines which my teacher quoted in a class, and they stuck up in my mind, and I keep quoting them. They say, standing at the feet, gazing at the sky. How will you rise if you never try? You are standing at the feet, gazing at the sky, but how will you rise if you never try? The last line is the key. If you never try, you know, everybody should try. Because, and there was another line which hits my mind again: try, 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 try again till you succeed. Right? So we should always
Yes.
try.
That's a beautiful quote, and I think it will stay with me for a long time.
Yeah.
Now about the impact of on theater and cinema of literature. So I would say that by essence, so literature is linked intimately with theater and of course cinema by extension. Do you feel that this bond got reinforced over time, or instead started vanishing? Let's say.
Oh, yes. Cinema altogether is a very powerful visual agency, right? And theater has the time limit. Theater is also should I say, plethora of artists in labor, and the labor is unending. Cinema is something you make once, you have the shooting of the scene and takes or retakes, whatever you call it, and once it is filmized completely, the film is available for you. But theater is not like that. Every time you're working, every time you are rehearsing, every time you're putting fresh labor into that, even if you have done the same role, the same acting 10 times, 11th time again you are trying to remember the dialogue. So theater is a culture of labor, and that is why it is more appealing, it is more powerful. Now we separated cinema and theater for the purpose of disciplinary visual culture, but my concern is how these two are one and the same. They are one and the same in the art form, because when the journey of a story begins, we call it the journey of a story from page to stage, right? For us, the stage is both the drama stage and the screen of the film, but the story begins on a page of a book, and that is a journey of a story from page to stage. when I supposed when I was thinking about this idea of connecting in research, and my researchers have already worked on the story from page to stage. Two of them have been comparing Tagore, from Tagore's print books and stories, and the Tagore Katha Sagar stories, television series, and episodes, and then films also, Bengali films, films in English, because Tagore is a master and translated in most of the languages, and also Munshi Premchand. So, if you look at the ancient classical writers, I am taking examples from Indian but also from Western classics. If you go to Shakespeare, Milton, you go to Great Gatsby, American classic, and see the versions of the movies that were created one after the another. After the story was written on a page, it becomes a whole journey, the travel of the story from that page, the book, which is a printed text media, to the actual visual media where you have a film or a drama. What we need is a dimensional clarity. We call it media transfer. When the story is transformed into a drama or a film, we call it media transfer. And that is also a part of our disciplinary research. I teach a paper called Translation Skills. Strategies and skills in translation include media transfer, it includes adaptation, it includes subtitling. So, what is the dimensional clarity? The dimensional clarity is, you should understand three dimensions. Number one is plot, number two is characters, and number three is language. So, if you look differently, how the story having plot in the printed form creates or recreates its own plot in the stage. Maybe the director becomes a writer of the staged drama. The filmmaker becomes a writer again, because he's rewriting the story, reshaping the story, revisualizing it, domesticating it. As you have the example of Vishal Bharadwaja, for example, the new versions of Shakespeare. Now, if you look at Othello of Shakespeare in the original text, we call it original, right? We should call it the first text, because if I say original, I can't say this one is not original. There is a word controversy, but diction can be taken care of. My concern is the reproduction. The reproduction of Shakespeare's Othello in Vishal Bharadwaj Omkara. If you compare three dimensions, you have to put in mind how the plot of Othello becomes the plot of Omkara. How is it that the racial context becomes the Bihari Bahubali scenario in the movie, right? If you go to the second dimension, the characters, there you have Othello as a Moor, an African person. You have Iago. Here you have the Saif Ali Khan character, Langda Tyagi, and he is so powerfully, enhancing that malicious nature of Iago. So look at Vishal Bharadwaja as a great agent of Shakespeare, rebringing Shakespeare in the soil of Indian Bihari context and domesticating it. We call it domestication. The foreign text is domesticated, not only in plot, not only in character, but also in language. Look at the language that Othello uses, and look at the language that Omkara use. Of course, Hindi is different. I'm not talking about only translated version. I'm talking about the kind of accentuation, articulation, the kind of toning, the kind of ambiguity. What is important is ambiguity. Multiple layers of meanings are created. So that is what I mean. The area which is called intersectional area. Intersectionality, we call it in research. So what is intersectional area? The area where it is some cinema, some drama, some text. All the things are merged, and you can see the connection of the story from the printed page to the dramatized stage to the filmized screen. And that intersectional area is the interesting area.
Absolutely.
Yes, it is a very fertile soil for research.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So it means that even if there is an actual written book, the filmmaker doesn't have to follow necessarily this book. It can take some creative decisions, just like domestication you are talking about. It
Yes.
means that the the viewer will have an experience of this story, but through the lens of the filmmaker, which is
Yes.
quite interesting. And do you think the audience actually is aware of that? Do you think they actually
Of
realize?
course, they are very well aware audience. You know, there are people who will see Shakespeare somewhere, you know, plot borrowed from Shakespeare, because you have to acknowledge the source. And people who have read Shakespeare are more interested into viewing the remake of Shakespeare. I can give you another example. A great director currently in Mumbai is Rajat Kapoor.
Mhm.
You can watch Rajat Kapoor's remakes of Shakespeare. There are three trilogy he created. King Lear's story is recreated by Rajat Kapoor into the drama version, which is called Nothing Like Lear. A beautiful remake. Another drastic and very interesting version is Hamlet's recreation by Rajat Kapoor, which is called the original. Again, I'm saying original. Shakespeare's version is Hamlet the Prince. Rajat Kapoor gives a title Hamlet the Clown Prince.
Oh,
Look at that
that's a
word.
statement
Yes.
by itself.
Yes,
Yeah.
Clown Prince. And this is clown because actually the character is a clown.
Huh.
And surprisingly, when you read Hamlet, it's a tragedy. It's a classical tragedy, properly fitting to the definition of Aristotelian definition of tragedy. And Rajat Kapoor gives you a comedy. Can you ever imagine the tragedy of a classical master converted, remade, restructured, redimensioned, reinterpreted into the new form of comedy? People are bursting in laughter, every dialogue, every sentence, and the audience is bursting in laughter. And that is the same Shakespearean dialogue. Can you believe that?
The same.
Yes.
Just said in a different
yes,
intention.
Yes.
Wow.
That is ambiguity and the use of license that the director has. I would call it the director's license.
Mm-hmm.
Just as you have poet's license, just you have writer's license, you also have a big license, unspoken, unacknowledged, unrecognized, but used very properly, sometimes exploited. Because some directors exploit it to full-fledged length and scope. One example is Guide. Guide was a novel written by R.K. Narayan. Vijayanand, the brother of Devanand, filmized it in two versions, American version, which is English, and also Hindi version.
Okay.
Wahida Rahmanji, in her interview, answered my question when I asked her, how did you find the Hindi version and the English version? Because both are the versions where you have acted as Rosie, the main character. She narrated a very interesting episode where the American director was excited about the Cobra dance. The woman Rosie, who is a dancer, has a show on the stage which is shot in the film, and in Indian version of Hindi film, the plastic snake was brought. While the American director said, you Indian people are very adventurous, why don't you bring the real cobra? And that was done. Imagine. So the real cobra was brought to the stage, the dance was shot. In the middle of it, somebody shifted the focus or something, and because of the too much of focus, the cobra, the snake, was disturbed and it stood on its tail and it started running helter skelter on the stage. And it created a very funny scene. Everybody was running. You know, Wahidaji was describing this because she was talking about how the director had his own vision of the story written by R.K. Narayan and the Hindi film already directed by Vijayanand. So you can see that director has a different eye. You know, the very way they portray the frame like that, and they put you in the frame and look at you, you know, so that shows the vision. All these figures are very important when you want to see the impact, the adaptations. And the adaptations are different, but they are still having the same soul. It's like a different body, but the same soul.
Yes.
Right.
And on this aspect also, I wanted to ask you about all the visible ways literature is actually waiting and having an impact on cinema and theater. Like, for example, we can see Frankenstein being done multiple times. We can see even modern literature. We have seen some Twilight Narnia at this time, which is way closer, but was also a book and transferred into cinema. But also we see that sometimes it's a writer itself, like they decide to make a movie about someone, a biopic.
Yes.
So there are so many different things. I think we discussed earlier, maybe the language also.
Yes.
So what are all these ways that literature is still uh, really infusing in these media forms, even when the public is more or less aware of it? It's still infusing. What are your thoughts about that?
I think literature will never be wiped out as a source because you have such a treasure there.
Hmm.
You know, the biopic that you speak of, somebody's life is a story, and you are bringing that story not only into a book but into a film, and you are trying to show it to the people how this person lived, how this person struggled, how this person had many predicaments, plights, traumas, and overcome.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this recent movie called Shri,
Yes.
the blind businessman, Shrikant. Shrikant. So Rajkumar Rao is the person who has acted. See the motivational character. You know, every youngster should see such films. Not only the popular figures which are made into their biopics. Of course, you have Mahendra Dhoni, you have this Sachin Tendulkar, and many of the masters, sports,
Yes.
politics. You have Atal Bihari Vajpayee's film. You can see the Indira Gandhi's film recently. Biopics are a line of biopics because we started a fashion of making a biopics. But the biopics which inspire people to see, oh my god, this is what happened, and how come this character had overcome all this crisis. You know, that is very, 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 very important for the younger children, because painfully, again, I can say it aches my heart to see how the young people are going to the psychiatrist for counseling. They're falling prey to the drug addiction. Some of them are actually committing suicide. If you study the social survey of youngsters suicide ratio in India, it's maximum, much more than any other country. You know, in the Western countries you have the addiction and crime issues, but the suicide issue is more serious in India. What is the cause? Not only the parents pressure of bringing more marks or having ambition, or even Three Idiots gives you that example. You know,
Yes.
how the parents pressure is very important. Even the teachers, sometimes the teachers scold the children. That's why I said, when a child speaks in the class, never tell the child to shut up or to keep quiet, because the child is trying to say something. Even if the child is cracking a joke, what is wrong in it? What is wrong in it? If 50 minutes the teacher is speaking, if 5 minutes, 10 minutes the children speak, what is wrong in that?
It's life.
No, I am not saying create a chaos and everybody is speaking and nobody is listening. Of course, that cannot be a classroom scenario, but there has to be a balance. We have been radical. We have always been going either this way or that way. We are actually lacking the balance. The same thing about biopics, and also filmmakers are actually more worried about public demand. So, what will be appreciated by people is a huge question. Accordingly, they will take the risk. They will not make the movies which are not going to appeal to the public. Even now, you see some of the movies where people are not going. Painfully, Jagjit Singh's life biopic we are talking of was filmized by, is it Brahmanand, the director ji? And it was called Kagaz Ki Kashti. Now, such a great king of Ghazal, such a great man, he lived his life in a very, very unknown way. Many people do not even know how he came, where he came from, what was his family background, how he lived, and what was his routine. Everything is shown in that biopic. Unfortunately, when I went to the biopic, the manager told me that, Madam, आप नहीं देख सकते ये film because you are only one person who bought a ticket and nobody else. So we are not going to show the movie. I quarreled. I said, I have bought the ticket online. You have given me. So I want to see the film. And then they had to show it to me in the full hall. I was sitting alone and watching Jagjit Singh. You know?
Yes.
But look at the people, the kind of appreciation we have, the kind of taste we are developing.
Is there maybe some novels or some books in general that you wish would have been adapted in theater, in cinema? Because after all, you're studying that a lot. You, as you said, you're reading every day at least
Yeah.
one text.
Yes.
So you must have a lot of
Yes,
things.
I think there, if I want to give you line of names, there are suggestions, unendingly long list of suggestions. If you want to ask me which films, which text should be adopted for films, or which stories or books should be taken for staging into the drama. Recently, just yesterday, I saw Mujib Khan's play in Veda Kumbha. It was about Premchand stories, and this man, who is a director in Hindi, has created, I think, more than 300 stories into Premchand dramas.
Oh, wow.
One master he has picked up, and he is trying to bring every story to the stage. Though it is not possible, Premchand stories are very, very different type. It's not possible to show that scenario on the stage. But how the director tactfully manages to do that. So yesterday, what he did was, Bade Ghar Ki Beti is one story. You can't show the Bada Ghar, the whole scenario on the stage every time. So what he does, he has a narrator in the story. So there is a couple of people sitting on a bench, and they start telling us the story. When the crucial scene comes, only that scene is enacted by the other characters. The focus will shift this side of the stage, and the scene is enacted. I think that's a beautiful combination, because people will not read Premchand. At least they will see the drama, and they will know what is the story about. So now everybody knows. Those who watched this play will know what is Bade Ghar Ki Beti about. So they will be acquainted with the writer as well. This is something what should be done with lot of classics. If I begin from Chaucer, Milton, Western classics, American classics, Tennessee Williams, Eugene O'Neill, modern masters like Bernard Shaw, Henry Gibson, we have been doing intermittently. I remember Ila Arunji created a festival of 6 days, which she calls Ibsen Festival. And very interestingly, she has also used the technique of domestication. So she is actually creating Rajasthani drama out of Henry Gibson's Norwegian play. The same characters, the same story, but the language is Rajasthani Hindi. And because she is a singer and she is very passionate about music, she has also inserted songs in the drama. So imagine how Ibsen would be happy if he comes back from his grave and watches Ila Arun doing a Rajasthani version of Marichika, Lady of the Sea. His drama, which is not even known by many people. This is what a drama director, a filmmaker has to think of. There are line of classics. If we bring those classics to the younger generation, because the younger generation is not going to read the classics in the library, so why don't we bring the library to the people through the stage, through the film screening? That can be done. Mark Twain's novel Pudd'nhead Wilson is one of my favorite novels. It's such a story of you can call it a crime story, you can call it a murder story, you can call it a love story, a romantic story, an adventure story, what not, everything is there.
You can do a Masana movie out of that.
Yes, a very, very hit movie. But somebody has to do that. Somebody has to read the story and pick it up and do a film on it. And it will be so nice to give this as a contribution to the society. Because everything we not make only for money. Right? So there is something we call art for art's sake, art for life's sake. And there comes the role of the director and the filmmaker to go to the library, filter, choose, select the classics, and bring them to the actual stage or screening of the film.
That would be amazing if they could do that. And
I think we can
hopefully
hope
they will do
do
this
it.
one.
Yes,
Yes.
because there are multiple talented directors around. Like I said, Rajat Kapoor is there, Purva Naresh is there in Hindi, Nasruddin Shahji is there with Motley Group. He has done a lot of Shaw, Bernard Shaw, and a lot of plays. So he has done to some extent, and many of the filmmakers as well. Yes.
Amazing. And now, to end this interview, I would really like you to give us any thought that you would like to share with us, because I think that there is at least one subject that you really want to discuss now, and I would really love you to do that.
So, I think Indian society right now is going through a very, very unbearable transition. You know, this is a transition of age gap, of generation gap, of the gap of communication. The gap of communication, because we are tied to the mobile, we are tied to the laptop, we are tied to social media and the machinery around us, but we are actually breaking connections from the human beings around us. So there is a serious issue of human communication and human relationships. We call it human relationships. It's not only within the family, but also without the family, outside in the society. How many times you talk to your friend, not on phone but sitting together? How many evenings you spend with the friends in get together? You know, it's very difficult nowadays, unless it is a planned get together party something. I don't want party as a popular word, but my concern is, when I was a child, I still remember every Saturday Sunday we used to go to some playground, play there together, sit there together. We had no mobiles and no other things to entangle us. So that was a lucky situation, I would say. But not only physical movement, but also mind that was moved every time. And that's why human bonding is so strong source of energy for us. We don't have negativity in us. My generation, my earlier generation, my parents generation, they have less negativity. Now the younger generation has more negativity in the sense they get depressed easily. If you send a message, a child, I'm talking about a child with a mobile, maybe 7th class child. If the child is sending a message and waiting for the tick to become blue, and if the tick is not turning into blue, look at the face of the child. So that easy is depression. And we were slapped by the elders, we were thrown out, you know, we were abused, scolded, anything, but we came back, bouncing back to life, because that liveliness was given to us through the you know, through the people around, through the bonding, social and human bonding. And I think the suffering is coming more to women, to children, and to the senior citizens, because they are the weaker sections of society, weaker by mind, by emotion, by body. They are the sufferers. You know, man, young man, energetic man, he is always the dominating part of the society. So it's not only patriarchy. I'm not just talking about gender. I'm talking about the Darwin's evolutionary principle. Might is right. Survival of the fittest. But does that mean that we are not going to help the survival of those who are not the fittest? They may not be the fittest, but they are fit. They are to be made to be fit to survive. How are we going to help them? If I am fit to survive and somebody is not able to survive, if I'm not helping the one who is not able, what is my fitness? Is it not self-centered? Is it not more animate? What is the human quality then? Where are the human values then? What is the human level of society then?
Yes.
So our concern has to be the focus on the weaker, the marginalized. May it be caste, may it be gender, may it be monetarily marginalized, poor people. You know, I have seen people going to the slum areas of Dharavi and picking up children and teaching them something, helping them. Maybe a little thing. It's not a great thing to do. But I appreciate that gesture. And some people are doing it without taking a photograph,
Absolutely.
without posting it on the social media. So there is the zeal, the desire, the urge, what I call the human urge. And that touches my heart very much. I think I need to see more people like that. And I would, of course, devote myself to such work. And I look forward to find like minded people where we can bind together and do some social contribution without acknowledgement. We are not doing it for somebody else. We want to do it because it is our duty, our purpose of life,
Hmm.
and that will make our life meaningful.
Absolutely. I actually heard a quote many years now back saying that we can see the development and the humanity of a society depending on how they treat the weakest. And
Yes, yes.
that's exactly
That
what you're
that is a
explaining here.
timeless quote. It's a
Yes.
timeless quote. It's so applicable.
Yes, because every society we can see today, depending on if you're basically putting the weakest aside or if you
Yeah.
consider that you have to protect them, because I would like to see what a society can become without a woman or a
Yes.
child.
No, the
I want to
society
see
will
how
not
many
exist.
generations you
The
will have
society
without
will
them.
not exist without a woman. That is not
Exactly.
possible.
So when a woman is treated in the way you can see all over the world, finally,
That reminds
that's
me of the poem in this book when you will read. It is
Mhm.
called Woman, and the woman's work is all taking care of children and man and everything. And the last line is, "Oh woman, without you, his world is rot."
that's very well said.
Yes.
Well, I really appreciate this time with you. It was a very interesting interview for me and really interesting conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mari. It's nice.
Thank you.
It was a pleasant experience for me. Thank you so much for asking so many interesting questions.
I'm very glad. Really.
Thank you.